When we were in Europe, it struck me, the conclusion to our dialogue there, that Europeans felt that Europe had decided to turn the page on history and said Asia has not. And that's the key turning point as to whether you're going to have a future of war or peace. I'd like the panel's thoughts on that. And Kevin, you've been quoting someone, I forget whom, recently saying all wars are rooted in humiliation. How much has Asia moved beyond its history? Is it willing to? And how important is this to building, agencies of resiliency to deal with the tensions that come up?
I don't think you can turn your back on your history. I mean, to say I've turned a page, the end of history, this doesn't work. You have to come to terms with your history and decide to move on, yes. And I get the sense that there's been enough rapid change in Asia that people are actually looking at a future which is very different from the past. They now know that it's possible to have a different future. Certainly that's true in India, where you can think, in China you speak of the China dream. In India we think of a future which is very, very different from the past. That doesn't mean we've abandoned our history or forgotten it or that we're writing it off. It's still there, but we're trying to get beyond it. And so I think to that the answer is we need to work it out among ourselves in Asia. And I think that's the exercise that we're trying to do here in the Commission. I don't know, what do you think?
Well, I think history in the case of China-Japan relation, or the Russia is relevant here as well. In China, we discuss the significance of history, but not really people are linking this history into the reality today between China and Japan. Of course, we talk about the Diaoyu Island, the Senkakus, and so on. And some people are thinking about actual warfare, but I don't think the top leaderships are buying that argument. So history is history itself. It's not going to turn to be actual conflict. But when we think about Europe, of course, the French and Germans have solved their problems, or they leave the history behind. But to compare Asia with Europe, in the last 30 years or so, Asia has not have a large-scale war, real warfare. But in Europe, first you have Chechnya, and then you have, of course, this is not the central part of Europe, and then you have Kosovo. And then you have a border war between Georgia and Russia. And then you have a Ukraine or some kind of warfare. So it's not really very perfect in Europe or disaster in Asia. So we talk about history and we have history issues, but this is basically political. So we can find a way to reduce tensions. And that is the central issue.
History is one thing. The scarring of memory and the scarring of the soul of peoples and nations is something else. And that often requires, as we know from our Timor, Indonesia experience, processes also of reconciliation. And that's a hard road. Creative diplomatic imagination partnered with that, and then practical regional problem solving, I think, form a conjoint response to, let's call it, the problems of history.